in this Python tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your very own app for merging PDFs together. We're going to be using Tkinter for the user interface and PyPDF2 for handling PDF files. By the end of this tutorial, you have a fully functional app that lets you merge multiple PDFs together, meaning you've got something very useful, very functional, and it will show in your portfolio that you know how to create tools for people that actually need real utility. So this is a real world Python project. So let's dive in now and let's build this project. So I'm going to be building this inside our Visual Studio Code or VS Code. So I've started myself up with a new file called PDFMerger.py. But before I get started with actually building this project, we need to make sure that we have all the necessary libraries. So Tkinter will come installed already with Python, part of the standard library, so you haven't got to do anything there. But unless you've got PyPDF2 installed already, you need to run the following command in order to make sure that your system has it ready. Here I am at the terminal. So I'm at the terminal, and if I want to install this library, I would simply pip install, and it is 2. So I'd run that command, and that would then install the package. Obviously, I already have this installed, so if I run this command, it would say that the requirements are already satisfied, so I already have it. That's great. But if you don't have it, run that command, and then you'll be ready to follow along with this tutorial. So after you've got that set up, the next stage is to begin creating this project. So what's our first thing? Well, the first thing we need to do is make our imports. I mentioned we're going to be using Tkinter, so obviously we've got to import that. Also, we've got to import from the PyPDF2 library. Let's make our imports now. So I'm going to import Tkinter, and as always, we're going to import this as TK because that's standard practice. Then from Tkinter, we are going to import the file dialog along with message box. Okay, so we need our file dialog to allow users to navigate their directories and find a file to merge. And obviously message box, because we can then give alerts, such as a successful merging of PDFs or an error if that was the case. Okay, now from PyPDF2, we need to import PDFMerger. So we are merging PDFs together. Now there's even more that you can do with this library, and I'd encourage you to explore it if you'd like to. But for this app, for this purpose, in this project, we are using merging. So we want to merge together PDFs. So we've got Tkinter for the GUI, and we've got PyPDF's PDFMerger class to allow us to combine multiple PDFs into one single file. Okay, so the next stage is that we're going to actually be using OOP, object-oriented programming, for this app. Okay, so this is great because it's going to follow the principles of OOP, and it's going to help us create something that's reusable and easily maintainable. Now, all we need to do to begin with is we need to create our class, which we'll call PDFMerger app. We're going to give the init method, which is a dunder, double underscore method that every class in Python OOP requires. This is what we do to initialize the class by setting all the attributes for the instance of the class. When we create our object, which will be a PDFMerger app object, you'll have these attributes during initialization. So let's begin. We're going to call the class PDFMerger app, and as a standard practice with creating, make sure I've got 2 S's. Standard practice with creating a class in Python, you capitalize at the beginning compared to a function where you use lowercase. And also we use camel case rather than underscores for multiple words. So you might also hear this sometimes referred to as Pascal case, just out of interest, but back when I was taught, it was camel case. So we've got our double underscore, our dunder, which is init. And for this, of course, we always have to pass in self, and we'll also be passing in root. Now, root is going to be essentially a root Tkinter TK object. We're going to create our window outside. We're then going to pass this in, and this window is then going to be a variable used within our instance of an object. And we're going to assign things to that, like buttons and labels and fields, because that's how we're going to be creating our GUI. So when you're using OOP or something like a GUI, this is a really neat way to do it. We're passing in Tkinter object when we create the instance of our class, and it keeps everything nice and neat. So begin with, we are going to set our root, and obviously that is going to be equal to root. So notice I'm doing self.root. So each instance of this class, so an object, is going to have a root attribute, and that is going to be equal to the root variable that we pass in, and that is going to be equal to a Tkinter object that we create later. So we'll circle back around to that, but that will make a lot of sense. So knowing that we're using a Tkinter object as the root, we know that we have a title attribute, so we can set that to be the following. We also have some other attributes we can set. So we have geometry. So this is going to be the size of our app. Let's go with something like 600 by 400. Of course, you can experiment with this. Use whatever you like. And we can also use the configure method to set the background. And I think we'll set this to the following. So F0, F. So we have now initialized our Windows attributes. And the next thing we want to do is we want to create an attribute for collecting PDF files. So we'll just call this self PDF underscore files. I'm going to initialize this to an empty list, and we can then append items to this list when we want to merge PDFs together. Finally, let's add this in advance. So I'm going to add this now. This is a create widgets method call. Now this method does not yet exist. And this method is where we're actually going to define the elements of our GUI. I'm adding it now and we'll come to define this later, but you'll notice that what this means is that when we create a new instance of the class, we're going to pass in our root object, assign a bunch of things to attributes based upon the root. I'm then going to set the title, the geometry and the background of the root passed in. And bearing in mind the root is just an instance of a Tkinter window. We are initializing an empty list, which is going to store the PDF files we want to merge. And we are calling a create method, which is going to create the GUI. This is all going to happen whenever we create a new instance of this class. And that is the init method taken care of. So once we've done that, the next thing we need to do is we need to define some methods for adding files, removing files, and merging PDFs, because of course that is the heart of this project, right? So let's get on with creating some methods. So let's add files. We'll create that method. As it's a method within a class, we have to pass in self, of course, because that's the instance of this class. And we're going to say files is going to be equal to file dialog. So we're using the file dialog class here from Tkinter. And what are we going to do with that? We're going to ask open file names. Make sure I use a period instead of comma. Ask open file names. And what are we going to do here? We're going to pass in a couple of parameters. So file types, we're going to say that is equal to the following. We're equal to a list. And within that list, we're going to have two tuples, so let's separate those. First tuple is going to say the following, so PDF files. Okay, let's give it like capital I, and we're going to say we want everything that, of course, has a PDF. That makes perfect sense to me. Next up, we're going to have, oh, in fact, we don't need two tuples, we need one tuple. So that's correct. Yeah, I'm getting myself confused there. So one tuple with two elements. Okay, and then after that, after the list, we're going to give a title, and this title is simply going to be select PDF files. Great. Okay, that looks good to me. So this is going to create a file dialog box, which is going to pop up for the user. The user is then going to be asked to select PDF files. And of course, we're going to be having the file types of PDF files.pdf, because those are the files that we're interested in. Think about any time you go to file open and you get that dialog box, it's going to default to file types you're searching for. And for us, it's going to be PDF files, and it's going to have a title of select PDF files to let the user know that's what we want to do. So that makes perfect sense. So what we've got to do next is that after the user has selected their files, we need to iterate over these file names and we need to do something with them. So what do we want to do? Well, we've got the dialog box, we've asked the user to select one or more PDF files, and we then want to add these to a list, and then we're going to display them in the app's interface. So let's get this set up. We want a for loop, and for file and files, we're going to do the following. Okay, so if the file is not in self.pdf files, so if the file is not in self.pdf files, what does that mean? Well, it means that right now, this PDF files thing, if it's not in there, it means that we need to add it, because of course we want to merge this file. We simply say self PDF files, and we're then going to do the following. We're going to say .append the file. So we're adding this file to the end of our list. Okay. And I've just noticed I need to insert one more for this, because of course this is part of this class, not a separate function. So just spotted that then. Okay. So what we have done then is we have created a dialog box, allowed the user to select the files they want to merge. We've then collected those into a files variable here. We're then iterating over that. We're checking each file to see whether it's already in our list of files or not. If it is, we do nothing, because of course, therefore, we wouldn't go into here. But if it isn't, we come in here. If it's not in there, we then append it, which means we add it to the end of the list. That's what appending does in Python. Now, finally, I'm going to do something here, which is a bit of a foreshadowing. We're going to do this self.listbox.insert, and I'm going to say tk.end, and then file. Now, this will make more sense when we get down to creating the GUI, but for now, imagine that there's going to be a list. It's a box, basically like a list of items, and we're going to be appending, or rather inserting, this new file that we have here into this, and we're going to put it at the end. So it's going to be stuck at the end. Okay, great. So that is our add files method. Now we need to do something for removing files. Okay, so we're adding files. That's great. What if the user changed their mind and wants to remove some files? So we need a method to handle that too. Let's create a remove files method. Again, we're passing in self because this is a method in a class. And let's just make sure we're in, we're got our indent at the right level. Excellent. So in this case, all we want to do is remove the selected files from both the list box and the list of file paths. Okay, so let's say the following. we're going to look at the fact that the user is going to be able to click on files within this list box. And when they click on it, it's going to give an index back. And that selected index we can then use to remove the file. So let's say the following: selected indices is equal to self.selection. Make sure I type that out properly. Yep. Now, notice in this, the list box doesn't exist yet, but we're foreshadowing. We're going to create this list box, and we can use this curse selection method to return the selected indices of any items in that box that are selected. You could highlight one, you could highlight all, you could highlight multiple, whatever you do. And then with that, we can iterate over that. So we can say for index in, and notice this, we're reversing it with the reverse method built into Python, selected indices. We are then going to do the following. Okay, we're going to say self.pdf files, and we're using the pop means that we would technically be returning the item and also removing it, but we don't want to assign to anything. So popping is just popping that item out of the list. Bearing in mind, self.pdf files is a list, and we pop this particular index out of the list, we're removing it from the list. And what do we need to do next? We also need to remove it from the list box. So we say self list box, you use the delete method for the list box and remove the index. Okay, and that's it. Perfect. This method will now remove any files that have been selected within our list box of files that we've previously loaded and decided we maybe want to merge. Okay, now that is looking really good, looking excellent. We're making great strides. Now, one thing you may be wondering is why we're using the reverse method. Well, the reason we want to reverse the indices is because if you think about it, we want to pop things off the end of our list. And the indices are going to be returned in ascending order, but we want to go in descending order. So if we've got index 1 and 3, we want to pop 3 off before 1 because that is further down the list. So if you are thinking about why we're using reversed, that's why. Okay, so we have that method. What do we need to do next? Well, we actually need to create our code for merging the PDFs. Okay, we're adding them, we're removing them if we need to, but now we need to merge them. This is what it's all about, of course. This is the purpose of this app. So let's create a new method called merge PDFs. Again, we're passing in self because it is a method for the class. And what do we want to do here? Well, first of all, we need to check whether there are any files to merge. So if there aren't, we could say if not self.pdf files, what do we do? Well, bearing in mind, if PDF files, which is a list, is empty, if it is in fact full of any items, this should return true. And if it's empty, it return false. So therefore, if it's empty, not false, equals true, which puts us into this block. And all we want to do is create a message box. And within that, we're going to show a warning. And within that warning, we're going to say the following. We're going to give it a title of the node files, and then a message that says the following. We could say, how about please add at least 2 PDF files to merge, which makes sense. You can't merge 1, you need to merge at least 2. Okay, I think that's a decent thing. And then afterwards, we would return. So if there are no files in the list, we would return. Okay, so what do we want to do next? Assuming that we do have files, we need to do something. We want to do the following. We want to create a save path, because what we're going to do is that we're going to create a new file name for the merged PDFs. And then after we've got the save path, we will then do the merging. So we need to get the path first, then we'll carry out the merging using the Py2PDF library. But let's get that path. So we could say, let's create a new variable called save path. We're going to use our file dialog, but this time we're going to use ask save as. And we want to save as, and this is going to give the user the opportunity to choose how they want to save their file. So we'll say the default extension is going to be, of course, what? PDF, because that's what we want to save it as. That makes sense to me. File types, I think we obviously also only want to use PDF. So we have our list, our tuple within that. We say PDF files. Keep capitalizing that I, don't I? PDF files, and then the type is .p. Great. And then the next bit is that we want to give a title. So we'll just put the title as, and that then tells the user exactly what they'd expect to be happening inside this box. So this box is going to pop up, allow the user to type in exactly how they want to save it and why they want to save it. Once that's done, that is going to then return a save path to this and assign it to there. Ideal. And then we can use that save path for actually saving the merged PDF once we perform the merging. This is hidden from the user, but it makes sense to do it this way. Okay, so if for some reason the save path is not valid, of course we want to return. Okay, we don't want to carry on with an invalid save path, so we do a quick check. So if it's blank, there's nothing there, we'll return. If on the other hand it's fine, we now need to use a try and except block. Okay, now we're going to use this to catch it in case there's any errors. It's always good to gracefully handle any errors. Okay, so let's say, what do we want to try? Well, we want to create a new object called merger, and this is going to be a PDFMerger object. Okay, so we've got our new object merger, and then we're going to do what? We're going to append all of the files in our list of PDF files, which is this attribute. We're going to append those to our merger object. So we just need a simple for loop. Say for PDF file in self.pdf files, I want you the following: merger.append PDF file. Okay, so we're just going to be merging all of those to, appending all of those to our merger. Great, so we've got that. And now after we've done that, the next thing we want to do is write this out. And we're going to write out this combined PDF object to the save path that we already have. So we simply say merger.write, we pass in our save path, which we already have, and then merger.close, finish it off and close that gracefully. And then we'll have another message box that would simply say, we'll use a show info, it's not a warning, we'll say success. And then we would give them a nice message. And I think in this case, we could do an F string, formatted string literal, and we'd say merged PDF save to, and then I think we could just use the save path. So maybe we could use line escape. There we go, line escape. And then we'll say save path. That'll look nice and neat. Great. So that will then show the user that the user has been able to successfully merge and save their PDFs. Now, this is our try, but that also means we need an accept in case something goes wrong. So let's say we're going to accept an exception as E, and then we're going to print out something to the user to let them know something went wrong. So we'll say message box, we're going to show an error because this is an error. We'll give a title of error, and then we're going to create another F string, I think makes sense, format string literal. We'll say an error while merging, never occurred while merging PDF. And then we would skip a line, and then I think we would just basically show the error message to the user. Of course, you could do whatever you want here. I would encourage you to expand this, maybe have more detailed error handling. Maybe you want to handle particular types of errors with different exceptions. Maybe you want to hide the error message from the user. Your call, your choice. But with this default setup, we'll be able to show the user exactly what goes on. And that's it. That now completes our merge PDFs method. We now have a method which uses PyPDF2's PDFMerger class to combine all sets of PDF files into one, and we use a save dialog to allow the user to choose why they want to save the merged files. Excellent. So at this stage, the only thing that's left is that we need to create our user interface. And how are we going to do that? Well, remember back at the top here, I said we've got this create widgets method. Well, now we're going to define that method. Let's define create widgets, obviously pass in self, and now we are essentially going to define our GUI. So we want to create a user interface with buttons and a list box for managing PDF files. We've already mentioned these things. So we know that we have a window that we're going to be using. So let's begin by creating a title label. And we'll use a TK, make sure we've got an assignment operator, the TK label. And within this, of course, we're going to be putting this with the root. Remember, we're going to be passing in into root object, and that is assigned to the self.root attribute up here. Remember, we pass in root and we assign it to self.root. And that will make all the more sense when we finish off this code, but we're going to be using that to assign our label to. So we're going to create some text, and let's just say PDFMerger. That's good. And then let's create a font setup. Let's say we'll go with Arial, and a size of 20 seems good to me. And in terms of the background, what should we do? So we want to get out of that. We want BG equals, we want to be inside of this, of course. So get back inside our parentheses, that parentheses. Great. BG, we're going to go with a color of F0, F7. And then let's also create the foreground. And we're going to set that to 333. That looks good. Okay. So once we've done that, the next thing to do is we're going to pack this, add some padding. Now, if any of this doesn't make sense, if you're brand new to using Tkinter and some of this terminology is confusing, I would highly recommend reading the documentation, but hopefully you'll be able to understand what's going on. It's fairly logical. If you've done any UX, UI design before, hopefully this will make sense to you. But if you want to learn more about Tkinter, maybe even drop a comment. If you want me to do a detailed dive into how to use Tkinter, I can maybe do that in a future video. Just let me know what you think about that. Okay, so we've got our title label. So what do we want to do? So if you remember back through here, we've actually put different things at different times. Remember we had a list box. Obviously, we've got to define our list box, haven't we? So how about we do that right now? So we're going to say the following. Self.listbox, this is where we create that attribute, is equal to TK listbox. Okay. And then obviously we need to put this in self.root. And then we need a select mode. And we'll say TK dot, I think multiple. It makes sense, of course, because we want the user to be able to select as many as they like. Let's select a width of 50, height of 10, and let's choose a font. So we'll say font is equal to Arial, and we'll give it a size of 12. Great, so that's our list box taken care of. Next up, let's pack this, and we're going to give it padding Y was 10. Lovely. And that is our list box. And that's where you're going to see the various files the user wants to merge in a list. Next up, we need an add file button. This is how users are going to be able to add files. So let's create a button, add file. It's going to be a button. And then within this, we want to assign it to something. It's probably going to be assigned to a button frame. So why don't we go back one for a second and let's create a frame. I think a frame is always a nice way to organize things like buttons. Let's create a button frame. Make sure we label this properly. Button frame, tk.frame. And obviously it's going to be in self.root. And let's give it a background equal to, let's use the same background that we used over here. So I'll just copy that rather than writing out again. That seems good to me. Great. And then let's pack this and then add y equals temp. Okay. So we've got our button. Let's assign this to our button frame. Great. And now let's add some text. And it's just going to say files. Of course, that makes sense. The user wants to know that's what they're using the button for. We need to add a command. This is the function that's going to be called once they click on this button. Of course, we have our add files method. So we're going to use that as the command. Let's set a background. Call the background. How about we go with F, and then we'll call the foreground white. Font, I think we'll go with Arial again. So we're just keeping it consistent. So we'll say Arial, and I'll give it a size of 12. We'll say pad X by 10 and pad Y by 5. Great, that is our button. Now let's pack this. Up our button, we're going to pack it. We'll say it's on the left side, and let's give it pad X R5. Great, so we now have a button the user can click on to add files. We also now need to create a remove file button. So I think the easy thing to do is I'm just going to remove that line. I'm going to copy this because it would be a lot easier to just copy it and change it ever so quickly. So we'll call this the remove file button. And here, the remove file button. From your button, it's going to say, what's going to say remove files. Command is obviously going to be remove files instead of add files. That makes sense to me. Everything else in there is okay, apart from the fact that I think we should change the color so it's easy to spot compared to the add file button. Why don't we make the color and then the foreground can be white as well. Everything else is the same. Packing is okay. We'll say left and by X. And I think we'll just copy that again and we'll use that also to create our merge button. So we'll call this merge file button. We'll change this to merge. Of course, we want to change. Oh, there's an error there. Let's make sure we get rid of that. We want this to be merge PDFs because that is the command we want to call. Background, we'll change that again. So you can tell we're taught. You want all the buttons to look different. I think good UX, UI design are the basic sense that someone can color code where things are. So how about we call this 28A745, and again, everything else can stay the same. And maybe the merge one can actually have a larger font so it really is prominent. So we'll give 14. I think we'll leave it there. We'll obviously need to change this to merge, and we'll put it on the left. And I think, actually, no, let's not put it on the left. That doesn't make any sense. Let's remove that. We want it to be prominent. So we'll remove that and we'll just add Y by 20. Okay, I think that makes sense. So we've got our merge file button, remove file button, add file button. Great. So the create widgets method, as far as I can see, is good to go. We've now created our GUI, accessible interface with buttons for adding, removing, and merging PDFs. And the list box is used to display the selected PDFs. And recall, we've got this list box and we use it in various points. For instance, we use the list box. Where do we use the list box? We obviously use it in remove files when we're looking for the selected items, for looking for the indices to remove files. Of course, using it for inserting new files too with add files as well. So there we go. Great. At this stage, I think the final bit is just to create our if name equals main block. So let's get outside. Let's make sure that this is all underneath the class. So I'm just going to make sure my indentation is all okay. Merge PDFs. Let's make sure that this is okay. Great. Lovely. So everything that's okay. So let's get out of this. Let's create an if name equals main block. Make sure we've got 2 underscores there. Name equals main Then what we're going to do, we need to create our root object. If you recall, I said that we need to create a root object, and that's what we're going to then pass in. So we're using the TK instantiation for an object called root. We're then going to pass that in. We're going to create a new variable called app. We're going to create a new PDFMerger app instance and pass in root. And that kind of closes the loop, really. If you remember at the top, in our init method, we passed in this Tkinter root object, and we use that throughout for defining our GUI. Well, we've created the Tkinter object here. We've created a new instance of our class, which is a new object, and we passed in that root object as the argument to create the GUI within the app. So that all ties it together. And then finally, we of course want to run our main loop method. And there you go. The main loop function keeps the app running until the user closes it. So we create our root window, we create our app, start the app, and we keep the root running until the user closes it. And that should be everything. So I'm going to save this now, and we should be good to go. So unless I've made some massive error, let's have a quick scan through and make sure there's nothing that's spotting as an error. Let's have a little look here. Everything looks to be okay. Okay, that looks fine to me in the create widgets method. All looks good. Great. So at this stage, the final bit is to go into our terminal, and we want to merge some PDFs. So what am I going to merge? Well, I've got two PDFs I'm going to merge. They're just two blank PDFs. So this is the first one. I'll zoom in a bit so you can see it. But if you have a look, this is the second dummy PDF file, and this is the first dummy PDF file. So these are just two single PDF files with one line of text in each. Nothing particularly exciting. What I want to do is I want to merge those and create one combined PDF. So let's have a look at that now. So I go Python PDFMerger and run this. We then open up our brand new app. Look at this, worked perfectly. You can see we've got our list box, we've got our add files, remove files, and merge files. If I want to add files, I click on add files, and then I can select both of these, click open, and there you go. They now show up. And notice how that I can select these, unselect, reselect. So if I wanted to remove one using the remove files, I click remove files. And we've got an error here saying curse selection does not exist. We need to make sure that we fix this. So we're back in here. I have literally just made the silliest error. So we can see over here that it's not showing. If I remove that curse selection, save, let's go back to the terminal. Let's close this down, clear, rerun. Here we go. Let's add those files again. Let's see if we can remove this. Everything works now. So there you go. Silly error, but easy to fix. So as you can see, the removing works fine. I could add that file back. There it is. And now I can merge files. I get the save dialog and I click save. And let's have a look here. Something strange. So that seems as though it's worked. I'm not entirely certain if it has. Let's just double check. I put merge PDF on PDF. Click saved. There we go. It has been saved. All right. So the next thing to do is to check whether it's actually there. So let me go over to my folder, see if I can find this merge PDF and open it up for you. And here we go, merge PDF. If I bring this over, you can now see, there you go. This is the first file. This is the second file. Everything has worked as you'd expect. So I'll just expand this so it makes it look easier. Page 1, page 2, we have merged our PDFs and saved it as merge PDF. Excellent. And there we go. Everything has worked. So there we go. We've now built a PDFMerger app with Python. You can add files, remove them, merge them into a single PDF. And I think you'll see this is one of those really excellent apps that shows you how you can do actually useful things, everyday activities, create your own tools to do it using Python. I think this is a great thing to add to your portfolio because you can really show to people out there, whether you're applying for jobs, whatever it is that you're doing, that you can create real tools with real utility, which I think is one of the best things about Python as a language. But also the advice I would give you for building a portfolio, using your skills to create practical things is an excellent way to show that you know how to use these skills for real life activities. So I hope you had fun doing this. I would encourage you to make any tweaks, enhancements that you like, use this as a framework or as a jumping up point to even more complicated things. Maybe you'll create the next Adobe Acrobat, who knows? But yeah, definitely try enhancing the app, add features, see if you can rearrange the file order, do other things, just play with it and get excited. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know in the comments how you got on with it. If there's anything else you'd like to see like this in the future. And yeah, I can't wait to see you in the next one.